Barbarism will deliver you no glory. Piety to evil will bring you no dignity. If you choose the path of terror, your life will be empty, your life will be brief, and your soul will be fully condemned.
Just as Poland could not be broken, I declare today for the world to hear that the West will never, ever be broken. Our values will prevail, our people will thrive, and our civilization will triumph.
Welcome back. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That was President Donald Trump, first in Riyadh in late May of this year, speaking to Arab leadership, both political and religious. And the second Donald Trump was on Thursday in Poland before the G20 got underway in Hamburg. Conservatives generally view those two speeches, along with the President Trump's address to Congress in February, as the rhetorical high points of his 6 months in the presidency. Liberals and some conservatives, or more accurately the anti-Trumpers, and those willing to give the president a hearing don't seem to be watching the same movie when it comes to the president. And worse, they are shouting about the different movies that they are watching at each other online 24/7. Joining me to discuss this, Marie Cox, host of the podcast With Friends Like These, contributor to the New York Times and the original Wonket, and Perry Bacon, senior political writer for 538, and before that, a familiar face around here as the senior political correspondent for NBC News. Welcome to you both. Marie, I'll start with you. As I think you're of the left, I'm of the right, Perry sitting here in the center. What do you make of this two world views of Donald Trump, that some never hear a bad word, some never hear a good word?
Well, you know, I think I don't want to derail the entire conversation, but I think one of the problems is that we're all talking about the movie and not about the actual policy. I think that the movie is meant to be entertaining. It's meant, on the one hand, for proponents to rile up the troops, and on the other hand, for people that are critics. Like, I mean, I think it's fair to say Trump doesn't care what the critics think, and also, to the extent he does care, the fact that they get angry, you know, just makes him feel better about what he's doing. So I think in some ways we're spending far too much time critiquing the movie and not enough time talking about what's actually happening, you know, in the theater, perhaps. And the other thing I would say is that this isn't new. You know, we've always kind of had two different worldviews. I think what's new and what's disturbing, and maybe the thing we can all agree on, is that sometimes you get so caught up in that movie. Again, we're not even talking about what the true facts on the ground are, and we're not listening to each other. Like, I know for myself, one of the reasons why I listen to your show, Hugh, one of the reasons why I watch Fox News, on occasion, is because I want to know what other people are thinking, and I want to be open to the idea that I might be wrong about something. I would hope that my colleagues on the other side would do the same.
Are we talking about the movie too much and not what Putin and to each other for 2 hours and 15 minutes yesterday?
I think we're covering that pretty well, but I would say some days it's like Trump tweets about something and there's a lot of coverage, and then General Mattis, Secretary Mattis makes a big decision, not as much coverage. I do think Anna's making the right point, which is that we're covering policy at times not enough, and the tweets and the sort of drama around Trump, and like I find the stories about will Reince Priebus be fired on July 4th. He didn't get fired on July 4th, as was reported, and the stories about the infighting at the White House often don't really tell us anything we don't know. White House staffers have always feuded in every administration versus policy matters and things like that. Donald Trump is changing the government in a lot of important ways. I think that should be more of the focus and less on the sort of what I call the palace intrigue and the tweets.
I think the Civil War in the commentary is actually drawing us away from the big issues, North Korea. And that's why I began with Daniel Silva today. Daniel, he was talking about ISIS and North Korea and Putin. And do you agree with me, Perry, that we are not, that we're fighting with each other an awful lot, but we are all avoiding the 9/11 that's out there that's coming?
I think that the Russia issue, I think, is being covered extensively in a certain way, in sort of the more investigative way in some ways than the sort of policy implications. I don't think that I don't think we're missing the big stories. I think you have to be careful about who you're reading. I think, you know, who you're following on Twitter and so on. I think I've tried to make sure when on my, you know, my own news consumption to make sure not to follow the same 10 or 15 political writers. Make sure I'm reading the Weekly Standard. Make sure I'm reading some things on Fox News. Make sure I'm following Fox's Twitter. So I think that the commentary is is very angry about various things, but there's also just a lot going on right now. So it's hard for me to say people are not covering this. We have a big health care bill going on right now. We have a lot of immigration changes that are happening. We have North Korea, a huge issue. You can imagine we could only be talking about North Korea this entire hour, and that would be appropriate as well. So I think the number of issues right now is hard, and the fact that Trump has sort of unsettled both parties on some level is also a part of why I think there's so much feuding.
He did that. Anna Marie, he has unsettled everybody. I mean, both the left and the right. The anti-Trumpers never stop being anti-Trump. And I do think we've lost a focus on what North Korea means with an anti-ballistic missile, with an ICBM and a nuclear capacity. Do you think we're giving enough time to the big issues and way too much time to Donald Trump?
I think we're giving way too much time to Donald Trump, and I think that's something that the media tends to feed. I believe that pro wrestling gif that he tweeted was such a perfect distillation of what's happening in the media, because CNN is like a willing participant in this. I mean, I should say extend it beyond CNN. I mean, the media in general, to some extent, the commentariat, I mean, perhaps be a little more specific, enjoys getting in the ring with Trump, and they want that to be the main show. And I think as journalists, what we need to do is show our value as the fourth estate in serving the people, and not in just fighting Trump, if that makes sense. Like, our role is not just to like beat up in the ring and be part of the show. Our role is to ferret out the truth. I do think that one unfortunate thing that's happened in this civil war in the commentariat is the politicization of national security, which was, again, kind of already happening. But I think Trump has actually played a big part in making it even more obvious, and in talking about national security the way that he does, and denigrating national security to a certain extent, and making it seem like they are political players. Not to say that they aren't political players, but I think he's really sort of made it like a litmus test for people, like, are you for or against him? And I think some of the commentariat has sort of bought into that idea in referencing national security.
Has that gone to, go ahead, Perry.
Kind of in the press a little bit on one issue. I think that there is like the gifts or the comments about anchors and those kind of things becoming the news. Trump is doing something different in terms of how he handles the presidency. Whether you agree with it or not, like, it used to be that in the old world, holding press conferences by the president, having a daily press conference, that was part of the White House's message. That was part of how they used the tools of the presidency. By changing that and really, devaluing the press secretary and valuing his Twitter feed more, that's a big shift in how he's using the tools of the presidency. I don't think that's an irrelevant story. I think we probably shouldn't frame it. We should probably frame it less in terms of Trump is being mean to us or Trump is denying information, and more about Trump is governing in a much different way than other presidents have. Is that smart or not? I can make an argument that the press secretary job could be useful for Trump if they use it a certain way. I think they're not using that job smartly, but it's a different case to make than just as bad or good. I think there's ways we can think about Trump as changing the presidency. That's probably a smarter way to think about it.
Let me both ask you before we, this subject bothers me a lot. This commentariat civil war has drifted down now to the family level. I mean, to friends and family, and Anna Marie and Perry. Do you see that, and what's your advice to people? Because I think it's actually fracturing longtime families and friends. It's very bad for the country.
Yeah. Well, Hugh, this is what my podcast is about, so I appreciate you bringing that up. And I've actually talked to people on the left and the right about this. It is a real issue. I have some personal advice. My in-laws are all conservative. My husband was a Republican when I married him. And that is to not, you're probably not going to convince the people closest to you. And in fact, I think that this is one area where it is better to listen than to try and convince. And that no one is going to change their mind because of a debate you had over Thanksgiving dinner. I think that if you want to talk about policies and you want to have debates, it's probably better to do it with people that you don't share a house or a bed with. And I think that the people that you share a home with are the people that you need to have deeper connections with beyond policy and politics.
A demilitarized zone at home?
Interesting.
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
Perry, do you agree with that?
I don't. I actually think more talk about politics would be good. I think Trump tapped into something when he was saying people feel like there's too much of a world. I can't talk. I can't be open about my feelings. I just think there's some value to people. There's, people have deeply held feelings about, gay marriage, race, religion. I think people should talk about those things more. The whole idea you shouldn't talk about politics or religion in front of people, I think that's a bad idea. I think we should have more and franker and more open and more real conversations about what divides us, and maybe that'll help address the issues.
Anna Marie, on last
I should be clear.
with friends like these.
You just,
go ahead.
Yes. I was just going to say, like, I think that's not you shouldn't talk about them, is you shouldn't expect to convince anybody about them.
I agree with that.
I mean,
sure.
you can talk about your feelings, but I think you should avoid warring over them, if that makes sense. I think that Perry and I probably are not that far apart.
Who do you talk to on with friends like these? Do you only talk to conservatives? Is that the deal?